In this video, I'm going to break down my recently updated and somewhat tweaked Cabal roster, and make sure you stick around until the end of the video to see if you are one of the lucky winners of our awesome custom dice courtesy of Kraken Miniatures. Hey guys, Rich from Richmond Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. And yes, I was playing Guardians competitively. I have now decided I'm jumped on the big bad cat wagon, as you may have seen from the video last week or the week before, I think it was. We were talking about how to deal with Malekith. I've got lots and lots of games under my belt with him, and I've decided that whilst I think he does sit in other places really well, the best home for him is actually with his beloved Cabal. There are just some tactics cards that are too hard to ignore that make him just even better than he was before. So let's jump over to TTS and we'll go through my current roster that I'm using in competitive events at the moment. And as I mentioned, guys, stick around until the very end because we will be doing the prize draw for the custom dice giveaway, once again courtesy of Kraken Miniatures. Okay, so here are the 10 characters that I have chosen for my Cabal roster, and you'll note that every single one of them, with the exception of one that doesn't count towards the affiliation and another one that does count towards the affiliation but can't actually benefit from any of the tactics cards, are all going to be Cabal. I'll run through the role of each character when I use them, and also any that I think are potentially interchangeable. So starting out, obviously, is the new big bad of MCP. It is, of course, Malekith. I have, however, brought the OG leader of the Cabal, Red Skull. Don't sit on him. It's nice to have that second leadership ability to fall back on, just in case the Malakith one isn't the best one for that particular scenario. And actually, even without using his leadership, there are some scenarios where Red Skull works fantastically well, particularly alongside Malekith. You guys know me. I don't need much of an excuse to bring MODOK in a roster, especially when it's Cabal and especially when he's affiliated. But I found that with Malekith, I like to be nice and tall. So I want at least one other big threat character in there. And MODOK for me is the best choice from Cabal. Yes, there are some other options, you know, Magneto and a couple of others, but for me, at 5 threat, MODOK is the best value in the affiliation at the moment, even with the nerfs that he got. And again, with that Malekith leadership potential allowing MODOK to get up the board much quicker, it's really, really nice. We have got some staple favourites in here then. Obviously, Baron Zemo as a solid 3-threat character, especially on those scenarios where we are going to be playing at a slightly higher threat. Believe it or not, I don't find much room for him outside of anything above sort of 17, sort of 17th plus threat. Really don't find any space for him in there, but 17 threat plus onwards, really good. Bullseye, absolutely solid 2-threat character. As you guys saw in the tier list video that we put together, we had him, both me and Quinn had him in as a solid A+ threat character. The fact that it's that guaranteed damage to all but a handful of characters per game means that he's going to hopefully get to trigger that Malekith ability for us as well. And being able to have that guaranteed is very nice when it comes to putting plans together as we're getting around the board. So next up then is Hood, and Hood is honestly a character that I slept on for a long time. I didn't like the fact that other people could control when he changed. I just didn't like the inconsistency with it, but where he really comes into his own is when I'm coming up against Steve's Avengers, which seems to be more and more often at the moment. A lot of these new characters we've had are really making Avengers very strong characters like Heimdall. But why is he in there? Well, Hex Shot, a rapid fire mystic attack, even though it's only 4 dice, is really nice. And when we go to the other side of his card, in the possessed side, that empowered Dark Lightning that 8 dice mystic attack, and then for every wild that you roll, you can pick another character within range 2, and he's going to, or within range 3, sorry, and they're going to automatically suffer 2 damage, means you can often take characters out without even having to make an attack against them. Again, which is very, very nice. One thing I didn't mention as well is we have the Black Art. Spend 3 power and he gets to heal a character for 3. And when we've got some big hitters in our team, such as Malekith, such as MODOK, having that heal can be absolutely clutch in a game. Being able to take 3 damage off of a Malekith, meaning that he can almost get back to full health if you combine that with his Midnight Phantasmagoria is it's very, very good. Next up then we have Killmonger, a character who I have loved for so long. I'm really happy that I get to include him in rosters again. He was my linchpin, or one of my 2 linchpins in my unaffiliated roster, where I did manage to go 4-0 at the Invitationals this year. However, I actually think he is one of the interchangeable characters in this roster, because I found a lot more love for Red Skull, and I've really started using him a lot more. Killmonger is definitely one character that you could swap out of there. He also does mean he frees up a Tactics card slot as well, because obviously you want to bring that Usurp the Throne with him. Who could you swap him out for? Venom is a very, very good choice because he's got that lethal protector. He's also got that pull as well that he can, or that push, sorry, we can push people in towards him. So getting opponents closer to the likes of MODOK or Malakith is really, really good. And he's got those reactive abilities as well, meaning that you can potentially trigger Malakith's leadership ability outside of your own activation, which is really, really strong. For the moment, I've still got Killmonger in there, though he still does a solid job when I want to murder people. And then rounding out the Cabal characters, and this is a character who I would say was making about 90% of my games earlier on. However, I'm tending to aim for a lower threat value now, and I'll go through my crisis cards in a moment and explain the reasoning why behind that. If I'm above sort of 17 threat, this is where Scourge can come in. So it's 17 threat, he often makes it in there depending on the setup. Right now, my sort of standard go-to is my extra character, so my 4th character at 17 threat is either Baron Zemo, if there's some objectives that are sort of around, where I need a long move. Scourge if we're sort of down the middle. And then actually Winter Soldier exclusively if I am on hammers, because getting a hammer on bucket is very, very nice. Scourge is also a great candidate for sacrifice as well, and he also has that pseudo bodyguard in Right Hand Man, which again can just ruin your opponent's day when they think they're going to get to do a big attack into Malekith, and instead they end up hitting Scourge with his 3 threat rather than a character that costs 2 and a bit times more. Winter Soldier, as I just mentioned, you're seeing him in almost every roster that's out there now at the moment. He is just so good. Again, I didn't give him the credit that he was due. For some reason, he just seems to roll amazing off 4 dice, and you put a hammer on him and he is even better. He's got those Hydra tactics as well, meaning that he can get around the board, and really it's that got your back that once again means that we can potentially be triggering Malekith's leadership ability outside of our own activations, which is very, very nice indeed. And lastly is your boy Lockjaw. He is a staple for me at 15 threat, and I'll run through how that works and what he does. You may have seen it recently in a video in a game against Aaron from Web Warrior Protocols, where I played with my Lockjaw. It wasn't at 15 threat, but the idea was the same. He is just an absolute power battery. He's got a size 3 throw of terrain, which means he can actually dish out some reasonable damage, but his main thing there is his teleport, getting my bigger characters up and around the board, meaning that they're not having to waste those valuable actions on such things as moving. Okay then guys, so next up we have got our crisis card selection. So starting from left to right then, we have our 3 secures. We've got Cosmic Invasion, Black Order descends on Earth at 16 threat. Reason for this is, first of all, I really like 16 threat. It's a very, very nice number for this particular roster. But also I've got 2 big base characters who can potentially get that extra power, and getting that extra power onto Malekith, or more usually what I go for is actually getting the extra power onto MODOK, because that will unlock a tactics card round 1 as well. Can be really good. Then we have Gamma Wave sweeps across Midwest. This is straight down the middle, and as you guys may have seen from the video I did about how to deal with Malekith, this is one that you don't want to play. Therefore, I'm playing Malekith, so I want him to be able to play this. He's got that amazing beam 4 attack, also doubled up with MODOK, with that Doomsday Chair ability as well, is very, very good. Yeah, just all round very, very good. And again, 15 threat, as I'll show you in a minute, is very nice. And then lastly, we've got Intrusions across City as Seals collapse. This is there really because I don't like high scoring. And whilst this is not down the middle of the board, it's left to right as opposed to south to north, whichever you want to look at it. It's still very, very congested, and that's what I want when I'm playing with Malekith. I want to be able to have congested opportunities. I don't want them too far spread apart, which this works really, really well for that. Alien ship crashes in downtown. It's a single objective. It's only 2 VPs, so it keeps that scoring every round down, which when you're playing the attrition game is really what you want. And actually, if you get this onto Malekith, it can be very, very difficult to get it off him, especially when we've got the sacrifice and you know, characters like Scourge who can take a hit for him as well. Yeah, really good. We've then got Fear Grips, who doesn't like a hammer. Getting one of these onto a big base character such as MODOK, such as Malekith, can be good. But as I mentioned earlier, I also like getting one of these onto Winter Soldier as well. So yeah, that's typically what I'm looking at with that one. And then lastly, and this is the newest edition, I did used to have a mutant, the mutant Madmen, mutant Extremis, whichever it is, at 14 threat, but I did go and move this to the 16 threat research station. At 16 threat, I've got a very, very nice tall list, which works really, really well. And once again, quite low scoring. And once again, there's nothing to pick up on this, so I'm not having to worry about that. And once again, it's down the middle of the board, which does force that fight in the middle, which is really what you want. Okay, on to tactics cards then. And starting out, let's start with the Cabal cards, because we are bringing 2 with us. And really, these are the reasons why I think A, Red Skull worked really, really well, but also why I do prefer Malekith in Cabal. So first of all, we've got Dark Rain. Spend 3 power, and then any allied Cabal characters may reroll any number of attack dice when attacking the chosen character this round. I've had a number of big attacks into characters that I needed to take off the board that have whiffed, and this is just a way of being able to really ensure that that character, whether it be, you know, a Hulk or a Thanos or somebody who's really dictating the play within the game, is just taken off the board. And with the combination of Follow Me, we can hopefully get 2 characters worth of attacks, so potentially 4 attacks into a single character. And when those attacks are the likes of Malekith and MODOK, more often than not, you are going to be able to take that character off the board. So next up is Cosmic Invigoration, a card that I really, really like and is so powerful in Cabal with either MODOK or Malekith. And there's so many different ways that you can use this card. You can use it just to try and get an extra activation. But one of the ways that has really caught my opponent out is I will have, let's say Malekith. I've already gone with Malekith during the round. He's got the activated token. I then go with MODOK. And at the end of MODOK's activation, or during MODOK's activation even, Red Skull uses Cosmic Invigoration. He takes that activated token from Malekith, and then we use the Follow Me from MODOK into Malekith again. So back-to-back activations almost, or with an opponent's turn in between, can be absolutely devastating, because quite often what your opponent will do is, once a big character like Malekith has had their turn, they'll often ignore them and try and go and pick off some of the other smaller characters. And this is a really, really cool way of being able to just bring that character back into the game. Yes, they might suffer some damage, but if it's a character like Malekith or MODOK, they've got 10 stamina or 10 health on their front side, so they really don't care too much about it. So yeah, really like that card. Malakith is an absolute staple for me. More often than not, it means, especially when I'm playing at 16 threat, it means that I can get Malekith up the board without having to use the teleport from Red Skull, and I'll use that on MODOK first. MODOK will then be able to usually double tap somebody, then getting enough power to be able to generate the 3 power needed to be able to play Malakith, which means then that Malekith can move up the board once for free, then do his ferocity if he needs to get into range, and then still double tap. Really, really nice card, and especially on a character like Malekith, where that extra movement is really, really key, and you don't want to be spending you don't want to be spending a tactics card, or spending an action on movement. Let's have a look at the 2 restricted. So patch up and sacrifice. You could swap one of these out potentially for a brace for impact. I do sometimes get caught out against teams that have a lot of throws, but for me, the more consistent ones that I use are patch up and our sacrifice. And I'll go through kind of my setup and what cards I take in different situations. The other 3 then, Marked for Death, Usurp the Throne, and Warpath. Obviously Usurp the Throne is attached to Killmonger. If you take Killmonger out, you can take Usurp the Throne out. I would say Marked for Death and Warpath are definitely interchangeable. If there's another character you want to take instead of Killmonger, by all means, you can swap a card out for them as well. Or if there's just some other generic cards that you really like, you can take them. There's a reason I don't take the Black Bifrost. For me, it's just an absolutely useless card. I've seen people talking about it. You can't use it turn 1. And I want to spend my power on Malekith destroying people, not getting other people up and around the board. Just absolutely pointless in my opinion. There is one other card, which is obviously Midnight Phantasmagoria, which I'll put up on the screen now, but obviously it's in my 10, but it is not in my 10 on here right now because it's not on TTS yet, so that's the only reason why. But you can see it on the board there. Basically, during Malekith's turn, he spends 3 power. He gets to push every allied character within range 3 short away from him, and then for every character pushed, he's going to gain a single power from that. I really like this card, particularly in the 2 of my favourite, or my favourite setup, which is Gamma Wave and Research Station. If I had a Utopia, that would be it. That is my absolute perfect setup at either threat level. I really don't care. Probably prefer 16 over 15. And Midnight Phantasmagoria just works so well, especially if you activate Malekith last, or at least second to last. I'm not always too concerned about the healing side of it as well. What I tend to find is that card will get dropped if I end up playing something that isn't down the middle. So intrusions, I still keep it because I can get people off points. If I was playing Demons Downtown, I'd still keep that there because I can get people off points. But if I'm playing Cosmic Invasion, or that's not with Research Station, so again, if Research Station's there, it's pretty much in there. But if, you know, if it's Cosmic Invasion and then Fear Grips, or if it's a pay to flip, I may not always take that, and I may actually swap it out for Patch Up. They tend to be my two interchangeable cards. So what we're going to do now is, guys, we're going to jump over and I'm going to show you some of my preferred setups at the various different threat levels and some of the opening plays that I've got. Okay guys, so the first one I want to go through is my favourite secure at the moment, maybe tied with Gamma Wave for this particular roster, and it's Cosmic Invasion. So we've got the 4 points, the targets of opportunity that you can see, the Cosmic Vaults that are here, here and here in this sort of nice diamond shape. But as you may have seen from some of my other videos when I talked about Ghost Rider, if we get a character with a large base, we can actually benefit from this round one. So when we're looking at the board edges, what sort of things am I looking for? Well, let me just clear these crisis tokens off and rotate this board around ever so slightly. So if I look at this side of the board here, the first thing I'm looking at is I've got this container in my way. That is potentially going to stop me from being able to deploy. Now if I look, I can actually see if I put this onto here, that is going to stop me being able to deploy right in the middle of the board all the way forward. So if I do have the opportunity to move the board, you know, if I am the second player, so I don't have priority, I'm going to be looking for a board edge that allows me to get into position, which as we can see here, absolutely does. Even better than that is a board edge where we have something that can potentially backstop us as well. So if I set up these crisis tokens, and you can see in the middle here, I'm then going to, yep, the deployment lines are on. Let me grab hold of Murdoch just because it's going to be easier to show you this. I put Murdoch right in the middle here, and you can see that that little counter above his head means that he's going to be within range 1. But what I've also got is this base here, which potentially could backstop me. Some maps on TTS are better than others for this, but that's what we're looking for with this this setup. And whilst we're here, let's carry on with our deployment. Now, obviously, depending on what the extracts were, let's say, for example, this is going to be the research station. So we'll just clear them off a second and we'll pop these back down. And the reason I want to put these in together is because they're both 16 threat and my setup is pretty much identical for it. So Murdoch would go in the middle like so. We would then keep Red Skull to one side there, and then Malekith to the other side here. Now, what I'm going to get to do at this point is I'm going to get to roll for that during that power phase for Murdoch. What I often find is that 16 threat, more times than not, 9 times out of 10, I'm not coming up against a board or an opponent that is as tall as me. They're usually at 4. So I have priority. That means that I'm going to get that really, really important potential pass, should I wish. On this setup, 99% of the time, I'm going to be passing if I have priority. But even if I don't pass, there are some things that I can do here to really, really help myself. So let's say that, you know, Murdoch doesn't get that power round 1, so everyone is just on their normal power phase. Really, the opening play for me is going to be Red Skull. It's going to be Cosmic Cube. He's going to get that power. He's then going to move one of these 2 characters up the board. Typically, it's going to be Murdoch, which may sound counterintuitive, but hear me out. So it'll be Murdoch, and then Red Skull will simply just move up onto this back point, usually backstopping Murdoch as well, just so he can stay in there. What that now means is, even if I didn't have priority, my opponent is going to really, really be hampered to try and get this researcher. The moment they move somebody up to here, I'm going to have Murdoch pounce on them. And the ideal scenario is Murdoch pounces, he gains 3 power, and then we can use aim lackeys. So aim lackeys is then going to allow us to have Malekith be able to make a free medium move. So let's move Malekith up to the middle here. And then you can see that from here, with that ferocity, there is almost no point in this sort of quadrant of the board that Malekith can't get to and be able to double tap an opponent. So that's one of my favourite setups at the moment. But let's take a quick look at a couple of others. Okay, so my next favourite, and the one where I think I've actually had the most success, is going to be that 15 threat secure gamma wave sweeps across the Midwest. And this is an absolutely brilliant setup for this particular roster that I've got. So let's take a quick look at the characters. Well, we've got Malekith and MODOK again. You're going to see they are the linchpin of most of these rosters. But this time we've swapped out the good old reliable Red Skull for the bestest boy in the world, aka Lockjaw. And let's again take a look at how we would do that initial opening play. So right in the middle here, we would be having Lockjaw. We want to make sure that either side of him, we've got enough space for Malekith and then MODOK. So that is going to be our setup. Now, once again, in an ideal world, we either don't have priority or we are taller than our opponent, so we get the option to pass. But the opening play, either way, is going to look pretty much the same. So let's start and do that automatic power. And we're always going to be starting off with Lockjaw. The key thing here is that teleport and who's a good boy. So when Lockjaw activates within range 2 of another allied character, whether they are dazed or not, he's going to gain 3 power. So he's going to gain 3 power. And then Lockjaw this round is basically going to spend 2 power and he's going to teleport MODOK. Now, depending on the setup of the board, usually we're going to have them going straight down the middle. So MODOK, oh, let's just turn that off a second. Here we go, try that again. So MODOK is going to move up the board like so. We want to try and make sure that we're within range 2 of these gamma shelters. Again, just because we don't want to take any extra damage unnecessarily. And then Malekith is going to do the same. Now, if we had some objectives out to the side, let's say that we were playing hammers or something like that, we may put them in slightly different directions. But that is it. That is all Lockjaw is going to do. He's spent all of his power and he's going to just stay exactly where he is. Now, we are probably going to be able to get Lockjaw back on this point during this first round, because with these two characters up here, it is extremely unlikely that we are not going to daze an opponent. And once we daze an opponent, Malekith's leadership ability kicks in, which means we can then make a short move back onto this back point. The doggo gets an extra power. He's not outside of range 2, and we make sure we are scoring that back point as well. So there are a couple of my favourite crises to play, the ones that I try to go for the most of the time. But what do we do in other situations? Well, as you've probably seen, Malekith and MODOK are going to be the core of my roster and are making it into every single squad. Maybe every now and then if I come up against something that's a little bit spicy, I may have to mix things up, but that is going to be my core. At 14 threat, I only have the one option, which is going to be Bullseye, which is no bad feat whatsoever, holding that back point and being able to dish out that extra damage. Hopefully triggering that leadership so these guys get to heal, gain some extra power, and get that move as well is really nice. As you've seen at 15 threat, more often than not, it is going to be Lockjaw because we have to be on Gamma Wave now. There is no herb, so if we're playing 15 threat, we are on Gamma Wave. 16 threat, the only options we've got for those, as we've seen, are Cosmic Portal and the Researcher, so that's always going to be Red Skull. But what about other threat levels, 17 threat, that sort of thing? Well, 17 threat typically is looking like this for me. So we bring in Bullseye and we bring in Lockjaw. However, if getting up the board and getting that priority is less important, I can swap Lockjaw out and potentially put Red Skull. potentially put Hood or even Baron Zemo in there. Usually, if I've got some far out objectives, Zemo comes in potentially, but more often than not, I like to use Lockjaw to get him up the board. Where I will trade Lockjaw for the more offensive Hood is when I am coming up against Steve's Avengers. He just is an absolute beast coming into that roster or that affiliation. Want to take down Steve as quickly as possible, stop them getting all of their cheap superpowers. So he comes into there. What about 18 threat then? So this is where we can get a little bit more interesting. Typically, my go-to 18 threat is going to be a combination of Lockjaw and or Winter Soldier and Scourge. If it is hammers, it is exclusive to Winter Soldier. If it's something other than hammers, then I'm often taking Scourge or falling back on Baron Zemo, or once again coming up against Steve's Avengers, I will be going with Hood. Zemo is good in certain situations, and if I want to be definitely more offensive, and I think that is the really big play, then Zemo will come in there to give me those rerolls. Mirror match, I'll take Scourge because I can't get those rerolls off into Malekith anyway, so they're pretty useless. Then at 19 threat, which is one of my least favourites, but I do have one in there as well. I just really don't like Deadly Legacy Virus, but we have a couple of different options. So what we want is one of these teleporting characters, so either Red Skull or Lockjaw. So what I'll typically do is go either Lockjaw with then a Killmonger, and that's the reason why you really do need that other 4 threat in there, or if I do decide to go with Red Skull, it then opens it up for me to be able to bring in any one of these other 3 threat characters. Again, depending on the setup, I really like having Hood in there, again, for Steve's Avengers. I also, if I am coming up against Steve's Avengers, I do like Red Skull. Reason is he's got Unleash the Cube, which means that for 4 power, as long as he does a damage against something like the Hulk, he gets a guaranteed throw-off, which throws into the Avengers are really nice, plus a whole bunch of other affiliations as well, Convocation, that sort of thing. And he's just a pretty solid back point holder. That Mastery of the Cube means that he can get people up and around the board as well. Or again, you could mix it up. You could go Lockjaw and Killmonger should you wish. And then at 20 threat, this again is where we have even more flexibility. I have used Red Skull, Killmonger and Red Skull and Killmonger together, which has been really, really nice. What I tend to do with this is almost identical opening play to what I showed you previously. However, the first time, or hopefully the first time, that we get one of the attacks off and daze one of our opponents, we actually give that power and that movement to Killmonger, meaning that he's getting further up the board, and we get to activate that charge round 1, hopefully being able then to double tap an opponent. Really strong against Convocation, purely because of the vibranium weapons, so it overrides any of the defensive abilities that they can use with their cards and Doctor Strange and all that kind of shenanigans. So yeah, very, very nice on there. And then but you can mix it up, right? There are some other options that you can go with. So Lockjaw, Bullseye, and then one of the 3 threats can work equally good as well. Okay, guys, so on to tactics cards next, and I have 3 tactics cards that make it into every single squad that I put together. They are Aim Lackeys, they are Dark Reign, and then they are Follow Me. What I then find is that I am either choosing Midnight Phantasmagoria or I'm choosing Patch Up, depending on the setup, depending on who I'm coming against. Midnight gives me a little bit more way of control. And if I'm coming up again against, like a Steve's Avengers or somebody else with a lot of bodyguards and I want to take down a particular target, Midnight works really, really well to be able to manipulate how the board is set out, move people from outside of range 2, range 3 of each other, and get those attacks off that I want. However, if I don't feel like I need that, I will opt for Patch Up. That will be my go-to. So those 2 are the interchangeable ones for me there. If Red Skull comes along, obviously that 5th card is then Cosmic Invigoration. If it's Killmonger, that is then going to be Usurp the Throne for those extra VPs should you need them, but realistically it's actually more going to be those extra dice that he adds into the attack. And I will also, in some circumstances, take Sacrifice as well. I really like the Doggo as a sacrifice target because he tends to stick around with people as well, and I'd rather have him take a hit than Malekith or Lockjaw. Sorry, Malekith or Modok even. But yeah, again, everything else is very interchangeable. That sort of last 5th spot. But yeah, the 3 that go into every single roster are going to be Aimlock, Dark Reign, Follow Me, and then either Patch Up or Midnight. And then depending on the setup, any of the others. And there we go, guys. That is my current Cabal roster and a little bit of a breakdown as to how I go about playing the games and how I approach the games. You guys know by now I am a big advocate of attrition-based play. It's just how I enjoy playing the game, and this roster is absolutely set up to be able to do that. Before we jump into the sort of roundup of the video then, guys, let's jump over and take a look and see which lucky winner has won one of our 2 sets of dice. So if you remember, guys, I did a video reviewing these the other week. Some absolutely amazing dice from Kraken Miniatures. I bought 1 set and I was gifted 1 set to give away. There'll be a link down in the description below to all the shops. There'll be a code up on screen somewhere for a discount, for a 20% discount, I think it is. And yeah, let's jump over to our random message picker and we'll see who the lucky winner is. Okay then, guys, so good luck to everyone who entered the competition, and we'll see who that lucky winner is. So it's going to be Matt Rakaz, and he says volcanic red dice are hot. So I think these are all 5 of the dice that you're looking for, which were my favourites, but they seem to be most people's favourites as well, if you guys can see them there. So Matt Rakaz, well done. There was 89 people entered for this one, so one of the highest ones that we've had. Message me on Discord, Facebook, on the About page of my channel, and we will we'll get these sent over to you in the post. And once again, a big shout out to Kraken Miniatures for donating those dice. And if you do want to pick up your own set, you can find a link down in the description below. Well, guys, there we go. I hope you did enjoy this video, and if you did enjoy the video, why not leave a like? It really does help, and it's a great way to support the channel. And if you want to support the channel even further, why not think about signing up for our Patreon? Link down in the description below. Various different tiers that you can join from as little as £1 a month. And a huge shout out to all of the patrons who already support me over there and help me with the day-to-day running of the channel. And if you do join the right tier, you'll also be able to join us for our monthly Patreon event that we do as well over on TTS. Guys, as always, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.